Jack D, there's 7 on the label. One glass on the living.
Hey, this is John Byron, and if I don't have church up loud, then I'm tuning into the Gainin Fast on Memphis podcast with Aaron Shriver.
I can feel you on my shoulder. Tennessee heat had me feeling colder.
Welcome to the Gainin Fast on Memphis podcast with Aaron Shriver, brought to you by Arlo Revolution. Each week, Aaron connects melodies and memories with fans and artists from all genres of life. When all else in life is gone, only music will be left to leave the legacy of life's adventures. Please welcome your host for the Gainin Fast on Memphis podcast, Aaron Shriver.
What is up, everybody? All right. Take 2. All right, we're going to test the audio, make sure everything's sounding good before we get kicked off. If you guys are joining in, like I said, before we get everything going up and going, we're just going to patch it all together. So tomorrow when you listen to this back on streaming, you're not even going to know there was 2 nights of this. So if you are tuning in, though, we are picking up where we left off last night after a storm knocked my entire internet out for a little bit. We were talking about kind of what got Don into the music game of everything, into the music genre, and just where he went from radio 97 ZOK into being a concert promoter, and that's where we're going to pick it up now. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Don back on. So we're going to go ahead and throw that music back on. You got to give him a little guest intro music too. How you doing, buddy?
Oh man, I'm doing better. You know what? It's kind of funny because you were playing that intro music for your show, and after last night's debacle with Mother Nature, I swear to God, I felt like I was in the sequel to Groundhog Day when I heard the music, and I'm like, is this going to happen every night now? Am I going to have to come back to my office every single night because Mother Nature decided it would be a really funny joke for Don and Aaron?
I'll send you that track, so every time you walk back in your office, it plays.
Man, I'm telling you, I was having flashbacks. Last night's weather was just so wicked. We won't spend much time talking about it, but as I looked out my window, it was pitch dark. It was like midnight. That's what it looked like last night. And you were ready to lose your power. My lights were flickering. And the next thing you know, we lost the connection. And we left off with you about to ask me, or I think you asked me, what a concert promoter does.
Yeah, I was kind of saying, if you went to a college and they gave you 2 minutes to tell the entire graduating class what you do for a living, you have to tell them what a concert promoter is. What are you telling them, man?
Well, I think I would start with, why are you asking me what I do for a living? Because God forbid you should not want to do this for a job in your own life. Yeah. You know, it's funny, man. Everybody wants to know what a concert promoter does. So I actually don't think that a lot of people actually know truly what a concert promoter does. So I am going to tell you like I was telling a college student. So I guess I have 2 minutes. So as a promoter, and specifically as a independent promoter, we do a lot. We wear a lot of different hats, and we've got a ton of responsibilities. So let's just start with the beginning. So where it goes is we're either on a list of agents who email us or call us, and a multitude of them do this with us, and they reach out and they say, hey, listen, Don, you know, Styx is gonna be touring in November. We've got the following dates to fill, and then it's our job from there to sort of dissect what makes the most sense. So what we want to do is identify places where, again, this fictional Styx wants to play and where it actually makes sense to have them play. We identify that. We try to track down the history of the artist, either in that market or nearby. And then we start assessing the cost. So what we have to do is identify if the building is available, number one. We assess the cost, and then we start the offer sheet. And the offer sheet, you know, we count on a multitude of people to help us in that area, and that's the venue. That's the venue's technical director, who's got to get us a stagehand estimate. My marketing guy's got to tell me how much money we're going to need for marketing. How much are we going to need for catering? What's the security requirement look like? More importantly, what's the production requirement? You know, do we have to bring in local sound lights? Do we have to bring in special effects? Do we have to bring in, 50 stagehands? So we start there and we build an offer based on all the expenses really needed to be able to produce the show. And then we draft it down, gives us a number. And then what we do is we start scaling the show and pricing the show that we feel will be able to still sell tickets. We've got to keep ticket prices at a level where we're not scaring away the customer. And at the end of the day, we're achieving our goal of not only being able to pay the artist, but in most cases, we've got to be able to produce a bonus situation for the artist. So our responsibilities: we negotiate talent, we book talent, we secure the production services, we do the medical services, security, catering, insurance requirements for the gig. We've got to call our insurance company and say, listen, this is what we need: music licensing, catering, after show food. You can jump in at any point here, cleaning, cleaning,
It's funny that you said after show food. That's one of the best parts.
Yeah, right. But literally,
you're using the makeshift stick. So we were talking last night quickly. I met Don through my old job. I worked at the Genesee Theater in Waukegan. I worked for Uline for about 8 years. And my last 3 years I worked there, I was in a theater, which was amazing. I was hoping to move up and do other things than maintenance and facilities, but hey, I had fun doing what I was doing. I met some really cool people
like me
doing it.
Like
but
me.
One of the coolest things, yes, we had Styx, and Styx is a local Chicago band, and they wanted Lou Malnati's pizza. And I was like, yes. So we had these pizza warmers. The guy was going to pick it up. I was like, hey, I will call it an extra one. Here's my money. Pick me one up. So he one extra one, threw it in their warmers. I was ready to go. I think came home with Lou's that night.
I got you beat there, because anytime anybody orders Lou Malnati's or Giordano's or any one of our Chicagoland, legendary pizza places, I'm always adding a pizza order. But the band is usually paying for mine. So.
Yeah, there you go. I see. I was at least the nice guy, because I was Uline, so I want to be fair. But
you
yeah,
are, what's funny, man? You actually brought up a really good point. Like, every band, when bands come to town, especially in the Chicagoland area, almost every one of them want like Lou Malnati's or true deep dish pizza, and we get into battles over who has the best deep dish.
Who's your
pizza.
favorite?
Man, I got a lot of favorites. My favorite, maybe this is a plug, it's a place called Pequod in Niles, and I believe there's one in the city. Pequod's got just oh my God, unbelievable. You want to put that on your list. And then I'm probably a Giordano's guy, because I like the saucier, and then Lou Malnati's. You can never go wrong with Lou's. So I am not dissing Lou's.
No, not at all. So going back to concert promoter, because we'll go down pizza rabbit hole for all day. It's pretty much you wear every hat there is, from the moment this concert is ever thought of until the moment the janitor is sweeping the floor. Oh, even after that, because you're trying to get these guys back down the road to the next closest venue so they can make some money the next night. So anything you guys see, Don has had his hands in for any concert that Nite Promotions is behind. We talked last night a little bit, or earlier in the podcast, we talked about how Don runs a lot independent. He's never really ran with the bigger companies because he likes it. He's like me. We like doing things our way. And the only way we're going to get it done our way is by doing it ourselves.
Well, and the reality of that statement is that I don't know how to do it the other way. Yeah. So I've always worked for myself. For 31 years, I've been an independent promoter. So, and I'm not going to say that everything that I do is the best. Is best. Because I only know it my way. I only know how to build an event my way. I only know how to market an event my way. So I'm sure that if I was challenged by a competitor, I'm sure that there's some stuff that they do that is absolutely awesome. But I can guarantee you that for the most part, almost everything that we do is awesome as well.
I loved working with you and your productions that you had at Genesee. Some of the best things. Another quick story I had there. George Thorogood came through once, and I was backstage. I was doing his rider, and we'll talk about his hospitality, filling his rider. And he looked at me when we came in, because normally you can't really. I don't talk. I don't talk to the artist at all. I kind of just do my thing, less talking to or spoken to. And he's like, "Oh, hey, I'm George." So I'm like, "Hey, man, if you need anything, just let me know. I'll take care of you." He's like, "Well, I actually could take one scotch, one bourbon, and one beer." I was like, this is freaking awesome, dude.
Did he really say that?
Yeah, dude. He straight up looked at me, and that's the only thing he said to me. But I was like, this is awesome. Walked out. He chuckled when I walked out. But it was always fun things like that. So, but being a concert promoter, you deal with artist riders. Yeah.
Let me give you my George Thorogood story. So huge Thorogood fan. And I finally got my first show at the Rialto Rialto Square Theater in Joliet, which is one of my favorite venues, and we can talk about that in a little bit as well. But sold out show, 1,800 people on their feet, and they were prime, man. I forgot what day of the week it was, but the walls were sweating. People were just drinking and drinking and drinking. Not that George's crowd doesn't drink normally.
No.
But in this case, you know, I was kind of fearful, actually. I looked out at the crowd and I went, oh, my God, I don't think I have enough security here tonight to handle this. And sure enough, I was right. We didn't have enough security because halfway through the show, I lost the stage. And that meant that people could actually access the stage. So few people were able to get on, and we had security basically throw them off back into the pit. And I'm like, oh my God, at the end of the night, George is gonna call me in his dressing room, and I am gonna catch holy hell from him. And sure enough, after the show, I got off stage, or I met him as he walked off stage, and the band just kind of looked at each other and they were shaking their heads, and they saw me, and George walked up to me and he said, tonight's show was crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, here it comes, dude. Here it comes. And I'm prepared for it. And he goes, I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't book me here again, I will hunt you down until the day I die.
I was saying, I love that.
You know what, man? And that, you know, it's funny. That also happened basically with Sammy Hagar and I. I was doing a run of dates with Sammy, who's one of my rock star idols. And he was quizzing me through the run. He's a really astute businessman, and maybe we can talk about him in a little bit. But after the show, same deal. I was standing off on the side of the stage. Crowd was lit. It was a Sunday night. They played the Chicago Theater the night before, and that was a sold-out show. And then, of course, they played us in Joliet for another sold-out show. And same deal, man. He walks off stage. He sees me barely lit on the side, and he walks up to me, and he said, I had more fun tonight than you can possibly imagine. And if you don't try to book me again, I'm going to get you. And, you know, those are moments that stick with you. And
yeah, because
you know what? And those are moments that I thrive on. You know?
Yeah, those are compliments, dude. You know, what you're doing, what you're meant to be or destined to do, you're doing right. And it makes you feel good. I mean, it just puts you in a good spot.
Man, so I feel very privileged, you know, when an artist actually pays homage to me when they walk off stage and they tell me that we did a good job, because we do a good job for people. It makes me feel wanted, which a lot of times in this business, the promoter is basically an afterthought.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. You're normally the guy that's swept up with the empty beer bottles and stuff at the end of the night because the artist moves on, and
or I'm the guy looking for beer in the empty beer bottles.
Like, damn, I never got to drink one tonight. I was so damn busy.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that, Aaron, do we?
Never. No. So we were briefly mentioned riders, and as a concert promoter and some venues, that you have to fulfill artist riders. So if you guys are listening, you don't know what an artist rider is, it's pretty much what their needs are. I want to say needs, but most of them are wants. But what their needs are for shows.
In a lot of cases, they are actually needs.
Yes. But for you, have you seen any crazy things? I mean, because everybody always talks about like the crazy things on a rider. Well, what's been your interesting things you've seen?
You know, I think bands have stopped messing around with that. I think the things that stick out to me the most, that I've seen the most over the years, and if there's any other promoters or venue managers out there that you know, review riders for a living like I do, we get a lot of underwear requests where true.
Yeah,
they want us to supply a 6-pack or 12-pack of fresh underwear. It's very specific, like whether they're Hanes or Jockey or Ralph Lauren, but it's so they want us to do that. Depending upon the age of the act and the promiscuousness of the act, condoms have been in riders many times over the years. Not so much anymore.
That's interesting.
You know, I work with a lot of older acts, so it's kind of shocking that at this point I don't get requests for Depends underground.
I was trying to think like the craziest one I saw when I was in Genesee for the few years, but I don't think we saw anything too crazy at all. But yeah, I did see the underwear and the socks a lot. And it was just mainly, and I really was looking or asked one of my buddies that are in the concert world, and it's because they don't have places. A lot of venues they go to don't have laundromat or don't have water.
That's right. Right.
So they don't have clean underwear, clean
and
stuff.
you're addressing it well. So a lot of the stuff that bands ask for, it's stuff that we take for granted, that we expect, like, come on, man. When I get out of here tonight, I can stop at the local grocery store and pick it up, or the local CVS, whatever. But they're tied up all day long. So they kind of count on us to be their support. You know, we have to feed them from the beginning of the day to the time they leave the building. And yeah, there's times like after show food is a pet peeve of mine. You know, bus stock is part of the riders. So bus stock is a big deal for me. Where
you're always a stickler about that. And I love that about you. When I worked at Genesee, a lot of the times they would try to erase that bus stock off those riders, and that's something they need to get down the road. Well, you want to leave them like that. And I always noticed that about you. I watch little things here and there.
So what are you calling me, a tightwad now or what?
No, I saw that you would fight for the bands. You would fight for the bands to get that bus stock.
Well,
I know. They would want to remove it, like the theater one, remove it or whatever, and you'd be like, no, they need this. They need that. And I saw that you would fight for them.
Yeah. So what I'm very cognizant of are the necessities, the things that I know they need. I know that they won't have an opportunity to pick up the following items. And, you know, a lot of times they're healthy items and things that they really, truly need. And I'm also the first guy to eliminate the fluff. I'm the guy that goes through a rider, especially for our shows. And, you know, if I think it's redundant, and let's just say I have multiple dates with the act and, you know, they're all in a given week, the first thing that I do is try to make a connection with the tour manager and explain our situation. You know, we discuss how sales are for the show. Certainly if sales are really strong and I'm not being impacted financially by giving them exactly what they want. In most cases, I will give them what they want. But if we're short of our goal, or if we're getting close to a bonus situation with the artist, and I want to make sure that the artist leaves with a little extra money in their pocket, the tour manager and I, or somebody from my office, will have a chat with him or her and talk about what you really need and what you don't need. And it's amazing. It's amazing when you establish a great line of communication with an artist and a tour manager that gets along with you. What they don't need is usually a lot more so than what they do need.
Yeah, because if you're on a tour bus, you're going to carry so much. And you have so much of an item because you're on tour for the last 2 months. You're gonna be like, hey, we don't need all this and we're good.
Yeah, and especially at the end of a tour, like you may have one of the last dates, or let's just say they're weekend warriors. And when I say weekend warriors, they go out Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays tops, and that's it. And then they go back home. Like a lot of country acts do that, and they go back home and they spend the rest of the week with their family. But what we do is at that point, and we know it's the end of the tour, it's either the last date or the second to last date, I know that they're trying to empty out the bus. So we go through that with the tour manager or a production assistant. So really good at saving people a lot of money on the catering side and really not wasting money. I'm going to tell you another pet peeve. Wasted food. Either the dinners, you know, or the meals we provide, the after show food we provide, and all of the dressing room requirements. And I'm going to tell you, because I paid for it, I'm the first to scoop that stuff up and bring it home.
Oh, you're always, I remember working, you're like, hey, did you eat? It was after the band, everybody was on stage and they ate there. You'd walk by you're like, hey, you make sure you got some food, right? You'd always be, I think I brought food home a couple times.
Well, it's just a waste. You know, I feel that, you know, if I don't have a need for it, somebody else has a need for it. And the worst thing in the world is for us to throw anything away. And, you know, I wish it were easier with the food that we cook for lunch and dinner to be able to give it to a local charity. But because there's rules and regulations and health department, it's hard to get that food to our local charities, because if I could do it, man, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Oh, hell yeah. I know you, man. It's one thing I've always noticed about you. This size of your heart, man. You have a huge heart. And I love it. I'm showing some pictures on screen, and I actually have a picture of you and Culture or Boy George in the band. One of the funniest stories I have from Genesee is a security story on my end. A fight broke out during this concert that night. I was working.
Beggars, right? All the shows. That
this is the security guard did. He got a hold of the guy, got him outside. And I remember because we were watching him, and the security guard literally grabs him off the ground, picks him up. He goes, really, dude? At Boy George? And everybody starts laughing. Like, you're going to pull this shit at Boy George?
Yeah. You know what's funny, man? And that brings up some stories over the years. It's the shows that we don't expect to have any problems at that we have problems at. And that's why I'm really careful. I don't want to jinx myself when I go into a show and go, hey man, it's an air supply show. We know there's not going to be a problem tonight, because that's the night where two ladies get into it because one was staring at the other's boyfriend or something like that. And it's the shows that we expect to have problems at the end of the night. You go up to our security director and, hey, how many fights or arrests? And he looks at me and he goes, none. And I'm like, what? What? You're ruining it for me, man. So, yeah, never underestimate or overestimate your audience, because you never know when problems occur.
Oh, dude, I don't know if it was your show or not, but Warrant. Remember the Warrant show at Genesee when we had kicked the couple out that was up the top because what they were doing? Then they went out in the parking lot up against a staff member's car.
Oh, I remember that really well, because I don't think I lived that one down, because that was my booking at the venue, and I don't think to this day I've actually lived that one down.
Hello, Wild Night. Speaking of Wild Nights, I'm
pretty sure another staff member.
Oh, you're free. Oh, are you back? You're frozen for a second. Okay,
yep, I'm here.
So what were you saying about another staff member? What was that?
No, I remember somebody was nice enough to wash the car down for the other staff member after that incident.
Oh
yeah.
my God.
Hey, let's move right along. All right. Let's
exactly.
go.
Well, yeah, I was going to talk about Wild Nights. There's a picture of you and Kenny G that I'm showing, and actually that was the night that I got off work.
That's a wild night.
Oh yeah. For me it was, because I got off work. It was the exact same concert. It was December 16th or 15th. December 15th was the concert, because I got off work, was trying to get in bed because I'd be back at work the next morning. My wife walks out of the bathroom and says, I think my water just broke. And we went straight to the hospital. And I always tell everybody, could I turn Kenny G on when I got home? Because I just watched the concert. I'm like, this guy rocked it. So I turned some Kenny G on. I'm getting in bed, going to lay down, go to sleep. Mind you, go to sleep. She's like, I got to go to the bathroom. She gets up and comes out and she goes, my water just broke. I'm like, oh, we're going to the hospital. Do we lose Don? There he is.
Responsible for getting you into that situation and becoming pregnant, but not actually inducing labor. So next time I see Kenny, I'm going to have to tell him that story, that he actually prompted labor for your wife. I think he'll get a kick out of that one.
Yeah, well, never always blame. I always tell her I blame Kenny G for that night, for a long night.
Okay.
And then we went to the hospital. We were in the hospital listening to the Kenny G Christmas album or something. I think it was.
Oh man, what a great plug. You know what? If Kenny's listening right now, or I'm gonna have to make sure he gets a download of this, I think you're gonna get the whole album collection being sent to your house.
Right. Well, that was for me. There was many artists I saw come through Genesee Theater that I never would have paid to see, I don't think, but I witnessed them. Michael Bolton be another one. I'm like, damn, these guys are really good. Like just their stage presence, how they work with the audience. And it was really cool to see these different acts come through there of people that I wouldn't pay to see in person, but now they would come around. I probably would go pay to see Kenny G and stuff. He was so damn good that night.
Well, and here's the deal, man. You know, this is the thing you always got to remember. And even as an audience member, you have to remember, even if you don't like somebody, any performer that's had a career, especially a lengthy career, that's been able to do what they do, they are true professionals. They are true entertainers. They didn't get where they are at without being entertainers, and they didn't get to stay in that position without being able to put it out on a nightly basis. So even though some of these acts that I work with may not be my cup of tea, and at the end of the night, I'm not going to listen to their music on the ride home, I respect each and every artist that I work with, because what they do is very difficult. People pay real money, serious money in most cases, and are looking for that memory. And that artist, every single night, even if they're not feeling up for it, let's just say we woke up today, we weren't in a good mood. We could kind of stumble through this show tonight and nobody really gives a crap. But at the end of the night, an artist that performs on stage has to put it out on stage, because they have to live, especially in today's world, with the negative feedback that's generated almost instantaneously online.
Dude, yeah.
And even back in the day, it was that word of mouth. So every night, and that's why I really do respect every single performer that I work with just for that alone.
Yeah, I agree, man. And they work hard. I mean, especially I know a lot of country guys. You said they're weekend warriors to get back for their families, but a lot of artists never see their families that much. I mean, some of them get lucky; they could take them out on tour with them, but some of them will go months, and they take those risks and they do it, and they do it just for the hardworking people that are out there buying tickets. So. Which is awesome that people are and concerts are coming back around now again. So
well, and I
it.
think we should spend a moment with that. So I think country acts overall have the system down to a science where it really works, and they truly are for the most part, with the exception of the superstar tours. And even there, you know, like Carrie Underwood, when I worked with her, Carrie Underwood would do blocks of dates, and I don't know how it works as well for them, but for like the rock acts, classic rock acts, blues acts that travel the world, US and internationally speaking, they're gone for months at a time. And
Yeah.
I always, you know, when I get close to an artist and I'm able to ask questions, I like to ask the question, how does this work with your family? And a lot of times, man, I get that quiet pause for a minute and they look at me and they're like, you know, you got to really love somebody and they really have to love you. And I get to see that a lot with both the artists and the crew members that I work with. And, you know, especially in today's world where they're able to do FaceTime, which, and trust me, man, I'm sad. I got to be honest, there's a couple nights where I shed tears because I walk by a production office and I see one of the crew guys on FaceTime with their little 2-year-old at home. And the 2-year-old looks into the camera and says, Daddy, when are you coming home? And I know what the answer is, and it's months. They're not going to be home for months. And usually they sidestep it, you know, Daddy will be home soon. And that's why I call you every single day. But when they hang up that phone or disconnect the call, you know, sometimes I'm there when that happens and I look at that person and we share that moment and I just kind of shake my head and I go, man, I get it. And I'm really lucky that every single night since I've been doing this, and I got to go home almost every night if I wanted to see my children growing up. So, man, it's moving me right now, brother. It's affecting me.
Let me ask you the same question. I actually had it down on my list because I see you busy. I'm friends with you on Facebook. I see you all over the place. If you guys are watching this live, you have seen pictures of his family go through the screen tonight. You are a very family oriented guy. Your daughter kicks ass was volleyball, everything else you've been posting. I mean, just amazing things that they've been doing. How do you juggle work, concerts? How do you juggle everything and put it together? Because most of your job, even me, I love going to concerts too. They're weekends. I mean, we talked about weekend warriors and stuff, and those are when the busy times are with the family. So how do you juggle that?
Well, it's a good question. And because I've been doing this for 31 years and my kids are 23, 22, and 17, I've had to navigate quite a few choppy waters over the years. And you know what, man, I've done a really good job of doing it because if there was an important event, with rare exception, Dad was always there. My daughter's big volleyball games, whether they were club level, high school, college, I was there, man. And you know what? I'm very lucky that I have a couple of guys that work for me that are awesome. And in a situation where we've got multiple shows in a night, and yet I still have a family obligation to get to, and I really need to be there. I've got great venue partners and great staffing at each of these venues that I work with, and they're able to handle our load. And I'm able to check in. You know, I do FaceTime, I do emails, I do calls. You'll see me on the phone, excuse me, at a volleyball match. Checking on my numbers for the night. Is the band happy? But at the end of the day, my heart's with the event and my children and my family. And I'm able to separate that. Now, that being said, I'm gone a lot of weekends. I always have been. It's part of the gig. You know, it's just part of what I signed up for. You know, everybody else works 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Don, in a perfect world, I'm busy every single Friday and Saturday. January through May, and then September through December. That's it, you know, and I make my money on those weekends. And my wife has come to not only expect it, but even on some levels appreciate it because, you know, I guess that old saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Well, within the concert world, we certainly have the opportunity to test that statement out, and it does work, and it does work. And we have a great marriage, and I have a great wife, and my wife volunteers at a cat shelter countless hours a week, and she's gone. Actually, I have to say she's probably gone more than I'm gone today, in these world or this world. And at the end of the day, it's just you learn to appreciate the time you have together, and I've done a really good job of it. And I hope anybody listening right now learns how to delegate well. And if there's an important family event to be at, pick the family event, please.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Always pick family first. I mean, if you want to be there, that's how I always tell everybody. You want to be there,
right.
Be there with their family. Because you could always have another day at work. You always have it. You never know when you might not have another day with the family. You got to be there for them. And I love that.
Hey, man, you only get one chance,
Yeah.
And I think we should say this for anybody working out there. You only get one chance. When you have kids and they're growing up and they have activities, if you miss all their activities, you're never gonna get that second chance again.
Oh.
Unless you remarry and you have more kids, and then you remarry and you have more kids.
Yep.
But
And
in a typical marriage, if you have a good marriage, you only have one opportunity. So let's not
speaking
mess
of
up.
how hard it is for artists. I mean, artists miss that all the time because they're gone all the time.
They are, and
they
are.
sacrifice.
And when they go on a tour, we like to think how easy artists have it. They travel in private jets and these beautiful tour buses.
Yeah.
They stay at the Four Seasons and the Ritz-Carltons of the world. But at the end of the day, they're gone a lot from their families. Now, the richer you are, the more, the higher level act you are, it allows you to take your family on tour with you. And over the years, I've seen many, many artists bring their children along. And it's funny because, I've developed relationships with nannies, with spouses, even kids themselves as they aged, as they got older. But, who's really good at it? Most of the country artists are really good about taking their kids on the road.
Have you ever seen, you've been doing it for 31 years. So, I mean, you could have seen, have you ever seen an artist bring his kid out on the road or their kid on the road and see that kid grow up into an artist themselves?
Yeah. I mean, it happens a lot. It's something that you don't actually pay attention to, but it really happens a lot. I remember I was working with Rhett Akins many, many years ago, and he had his young son there. Well, first and foremost, I forgot all about his young son, and we all know him now as Thomas Rhett.
Yep.
And he sticks out, but I think where I'm at that point now where because I've been around so long and I'm ancient, that a lot of the little kids are starting to become full-blown adults themselves. So I really think that the next few years I'm going to see a lot more of that, and we're going to see artists popping up that I can trace my lineage back to in terms of like when we started doing shows together. And I'm really interested in that, by the way. I hope to see, and I hope to be able to work with the kids of the parents that I used to work with.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. There's we went, my wife and I, this has been a few years now. We went and saw Joe Diffie years ago, and he brought his son up and just sing a couple songs with him. And I've been thinking the last couple of years, I'm like, now that we lost him last year, I'd love to see his son start doing stuff of his songs and everything else again. Because that night he sang his songs, he sounded amazing and everything else. So I'd love to see that when like the kid pays tribute to their parents or anything else with their music too.
Well, and you know what? And over the years, I've had countless experiences where a band member is one of the children of the lead member. I can tell you right now that one of my favorite bands that I've worked with for many years, Cheap Trick, their drummer is Rick Nielsen's son. And their bass player at the moment, until Tom Peterson recovers from surgery, is Robin Zander's son. So the kids are actually taking places. And you know what's funny, man? It works.
Nielsen's son, he was in a band called Harmony Riley, wasn't he?
He was awesome. Yeah.
I remember that.
Miles and Dax Nielsen were both in that.
Because there's if you're going down I-90, like headed towards Rockford, there's an overpass or a road called Harmony Riley Road or whatever.
Right.
Dude, I know that's where they got the name because from Rockford.
That is. And you know what? A lot of these kids grow up to be truly talented musicians, but not every one of them follows their parents on the stage. There might be a production manager that I've worked with over the years, multiple production managers that are actually children of the artist on stage. So it just depends on the artist and the relationship. I've also had many artists over the years where we start talking about family, And I'm like, any of your kids following in your footsteps? And they just look at me and they're like, God, no, we don't want that to happen. And I'm like,
Run.
okay, I got to ask that question. So, yeah, so it's really interesting. You know, what comes around goes around. You know, even on my front right now, at this point, I don't believe any of my children are going to be heading down my career path. And you know what's funny? Everybody goes, well, don't you feel bad about that? I'm like, no, honestly, I want each of my children to carve out. If this is the path they want to choose, sit with me, and then they'll come back out on the road with me and get to experience it and decide at that point if it's truly a business they want to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, let them decide and let them go where. I mean, that's kind of in the boat we're with. I mean, our kids are young, but it's like, hey, let them do whatever they want. If they want to grow up and be whatever, hey, let them have that dream, and wherever life takes them, it'll take them, man. So,
Amen. Amen. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, going back, or just kind of being in the business you're in, you did not expect a pandemic in 2020 at all. No one did. How did you get through it? Because I know a lot of being an independent for one, but a lot of businesses did not make it out of 2020 at all. And bars, venues, I mean, restaurants. How did Nite make it out of 2020? What did you do? We know at the end of the year, concerts kind of came back in a vehicle way. In a way, we'll talk about that if you want to a little bit. But tell me what 2020 really did for you. In a
man,
big.
I'll tell you what, it delivered the ultimate slap in the face, wake up call that anybody could ever dream of happening. And I never saw it coming. You know, when I saw the news breaking overseas that this coronavirus was going to hit the States and in fact was already in the States at that point, announced to us. But my pivotal moment and, you know, my freak out moment was March 12th of 2020. I was with one of my favorite acts, Lite, the comedian, down in Springfield, Illinois, and we knew that a governor shutdown was looming, and we thought that it could be happening any hour. And I made my way into town thinking today could be the day it happens. But as the afternoon progressed, I didn't see anything really popping out to scare me. And I got to the building late in the afternoon, and Ron had already pulled up, and he came out of the bus and he looks at me and he goes, "Are we good?" And I'm like, "We're good. We're good." It's like 4 o'clock, and we went ahead and did a sound check on stage, and finished the sound check, and he walked off and he goes, "We're looking good, aren't we?" And I'm like, "We're looking good." And he gets back out on the bus, and it probably was 30 seconds later that I got a call to come upstairs to the administrative office. And that's when I was delivered the punch to the gut, and the governor had made the decision that no shows could take place starting now and forward. And I argued my point that we were literally 2 hours from showtime. People were already pulling into the parking lot. I had a full staff in the house. I had the stage already set, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, guys, who's going to know if we do this show tonight? Well, the problem was that I was at a University of Illinois building down in Springfield, Illinois, the capital of our state. And the governor was probably a 5-minute freaking drive from the venue. And of course, I got the cold no, there is no show. And I walked out in disbelief. I knocked on the bus door, and Ron actually answered it. And he said, "What's up?" And I'm like, "No show." And he goes, "Seriously?" And I'm like, "Seriously." And I ended up doing some business, kind of cleaning things up backstage a little bit, knowing that it was over. And I went back out on the bus and spent some time with Ron. And finally, Ron looked at me, and I was in despair at that point. And he goes, "All right, got to get your rear end off the bus. I'm going to go to Nashville and party with my friends down there since I've got nothing else to do." So he was like, "Hey, when do you think we'll be able to do the show again?" And I said, "I think if we safely reschedule it for fall of last year, which would be 5 months later, September of 2020, we'll be fine. I'm not even thinking about it, not even worried about it." And I'm like, "You got any drinks for me?" And he goes, "Yeah, I left you all my booze in my dressing room. So literally, I posted it on Facebook. I probably should have, but I got shit faced on Facebook Live basically, and I went ahead and I sat down on this piece of carpeting on stage, and I think that the venue director basically sent out a message to all of his staff: don't mess with Don. When he's ready to leave, turn the lights off, let Don be by himself. And I think I sat there for 2 hours, and I guzzled quite a bit of alcohol because it was hitting home for me that my business was done.
Your dream.
And somehow I made it home from Springfield that night. And the cool thing was that in actuality, I didn't know that I'd have one show play after that. I had One Night at Queen, which is this fabulous tribute show, playing in Cedar Rapids, Iowa the next day. I think it was the next day. Yeah, it was the next day. And Iowa wasn't, or Saturday night. I'm sorry, it was 2 nights later. And they weren't quite as on top of it as we were in the state in terms of shutting things down. And literally, I had a sold out show, 2,000 people in the house. We made it by 1 hour. If we had started the show 1 hour later, the governor would not have allowed our show to play. So I got really lucky that my last show was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And so that was then. And then I went back home, and I woke up the next day and I started going, well, when is this going to end? And so I started trying to predict when this whole thing would be over. And I'm a news junkie, which is a fault of mine. So I read multiple newspapers and I watch multiple news channels because I can't get enough news. And I started to come to the office on a daily basis when nobody was here. In fact, my entire office building was vacant. I was the only one in my office building for literally 2 months. And I would come here with the hopes that I'd have a game plan put together so that when things started opening back up, I'd be ready to go. And I'd actually have the lead on everybody else. And week by week, I started to realize that things weren't changing. All the agents, all the agencies that I deal with, all the managers, everybody was gone. We were done as a business. And I had no clue as to when things would start back up. So I ended up killing off like 2 months at a time by putting together mementos and memories of my past and posting a lot of them on my Facebook page. And really, it was for my own.
Love that.
Yeah. And it retraced my steps in this business over the last 3 years. And
I think you're posting like a picture a day or something with you and an artist or something like that.
Yeah.
I loved like the stories and just following along. And like, it was really cool, dude. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. And it was for my personal
sanity.
It was, I wanted to share it with the world as well to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, it was more for me. I needed to remind myself of all the good that I did, of all the wonderful shows that I produced, of all the wonderful memories that I put together for all my awesome fans out there. And this helped me. This was basically my going to see a psychiatrist. In lieu of that, I self-medicated myself by doing this. And you know what? It really did help me out. And I think a lot of people who know me well knew that I kept a really positive outlook on life. Yeah. And I continue to do that through today, where we're still experiencing issues, and we're going to talk about that. But that's how I got through those rough few months. And then finally, after a few months, I got bored. I got tired of coming up with a memory of the day. I think I made it through like 200 memories of the day. And I went, you know what? I got to find something else to do, because between that and the golf course, and God knows my golf game's not making me in life. But between those two, it wasn't enough to satisfy me. I'm a guy that's always on the go. Everybody who knows me knows that I have to have my plate full at all times. And here I was after 3 months, and my plate was not full. And finally, after watching some of my peers in my business, and not a lot of them, but a few, and they successfully did it, I decided that I needed to really take a serious look at doing drive-in shows. So I ran the numbers. I talked to friends. I talked to competitors. And almost everybody that I talked to said, dude, you don't want to do it. The cost of doing a show, the liabilities, the amount of
What
work.
was your first thought of a drive-in show? When someone mentioned it to you, the first time you ever heard of it, what went through your head?
I thought it was absolutely crazy. I thought it was silly. I thought there's no way, man. I mean, basically, other than if I was doing it at a true drive-in with movie screens, the only possible advantage would be that I have this giant screen to work with. But I had to bring in everything else. I had to bring in the power. I had to bring in the stage. I had to bring in the barricade, the bathrooms, the police, the security, the catering, the backstage
Run a
trailer.
house staff.
And not only that, if I was going to do it, we were in the throes of COVID, and I had to have a COVID safe environment for my band, artist, crew, and my fans all the same. I'm going to tell you right now, after I started running the numbers on all the expenses that were going to be, all the things that we would need to do this and the cost of doing it, I went, you got to be crazy. This isn't going to work. So I pushed it off. And then I watched a guy pop up in the suburbs at the McHenry Outdoor Drive-In, and he started announcing these really cool hip shows, mostly EDM. Yeah. And I went, all right, and they're sold out. And I'm like, you know what? I can't give up this market. I've been doing shows here for 31 years. And I made calls, so between the McHenry Outdoor Drive-In, the Sears Center in Hoffman Estates, Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then we started reaching out to like 20 other drive-ins in the Midwest. And we made it a goal that we're going to do shows. And it was a lot of work, man. It was a lot of hurdles that we had to jump through. And I got to be honest, a lot of artists that we thought would want to do it wanted nothing to do with the format. Yeah. And what we found ourselves with was a very limited pool of talent that were willing to do this, that were willing to take the risk with us, that were willing to bend on their artist fees. And that was really the biggest number, is that these artists had to agree to basically cut their number in half or more to make it work. And yet they'd have to travel just to do our show, or maybe 2 shows in a weekend. And but what happened was we created this vehicle specifically. I'm gonna use the McHenry Outdoor Drive.
Yeah,
it's honestly one of my new favorite venues in the Midwest. And
we loved it.
People, yeah, and I know you were at least one of my shows, but
I think we did too.
Once we got the hang of it, and I got to thank a competitor of mine, because he allowed me to come out to one of his shows before we did our first show. Yeah. And he allowed me to see it in action, and he answered a ton of questions for me. And honestly, he could have been the biggest prick in the world and just said, screw you, I'm not going to help you. But at the end of the day, he didn't do that. And I have great regard for him for just doing what he did. And then he allowed us, we figured out a way where he had shows in place, and I'm like, hey, dude, you don't have a show on Friday night. What's the likelihood of you booking? You have the Thursday show, but you don't have a Friday, but yet you have a Saturday show. And he goes, at this point, I don't think I have anything for Friday. So we went out and looked for artists that were willing to work that made sense for that Friday. And we were able to share his production. And he had a massive production out there for our first couple shows. And so it was a great eye-opening experience for me, because we learned a lot from him and his people that worked for him, and they were true professionals. And they taught us a lot about drive-ins. And then we figured out that we could do it. So we ended up doing, I think, 12 drive-in shows. Our last drive-in show was last month. It was in June or July. It was the Disco Biscuits at the McHenry Outdoor Drive-In Theater. And I'm going to tell you right now, we didn't make money on it. In fact, we took a beating financially on that show, and we can talk about the reason why. But I have to be honest, I look back, and I went out in the crowd like I did every single night during all of our drive-in shows. And I looked at that stage, and I looked at the sky and this awesome backdrop and all these people having fun. And I kind of looked at myself and said, you know what, man, you did a good job on these. I don't rarely do that, but in this particular case, I felt that we as a company just did an outstanding job. And and not only that, man, our audience, our fans were so thankful. I can't tell you since last fall how many people reached out to me at the show, how many people came up to me in the parking lot, strangers, how many people sent me messages, emails, thanking me for that awesome production. And what I like to look back on when COVID is all over, I like to look back on this era of the drive-in concert.
Wow.
And I'm going to look back on it with a lot of fond memories, because when people needed entertainment more than they've ever needed it, we were there. We were there, man, and we provided it. And I wish somebody would have just kicked me in the ass a few months before and said, "Hey, buddy, get off your ass and stop digging through your mementos and go to work and do what you know how to do best." Because I got more out of it up until the end, and then we had the last couple months where we had 2 shows at Soldier Field with the Dark Star Orchestra, and then we did the Disco Biscuits a week or 2 later at McHenry. And what was very evident to me, because things had changed on the COVID front and everything. Actually, our first night of Dark Star Orchestra in early to mid-June at Soldier Field's parking lot, that was the night that things officially opened back up.
Yeah.
And all the COVID restrictions got thrown out the window. So we had sold, originally we had, social distancing between vehicles. Every other space was killed off. Well, as we progressed and we started seeing things open back up in different areas of the country, we started just filling in the spots. And before you know it, we had basically normal shows, with the exception of the fact that people had to drive in vehicles. But over the last, 2 weeks leading into these shows, people were not digging the idea of coming to a drive-in. They felt that we should leave the cars outside, park them in a different lot, and they wanted to all be together in a GA mosh pit. And because we had sold it the way we did, with vehicles being in the lot, we couldn't reverse our decision. And plus we were dealing with the Chicago Park District and Soldier Field, and there's a lot of politics involved. And it's kind of funny because all the TV stations showed up at my show that night, and they all asked for me, and they wanted to come in and shoot footage. Well, because we allowed people to congregate very closely that night, because all of a sudden I'm like, you know what, man, if I let TV stations in right now and they post this on the 10 o'clock news, which is what they would have done, and they probably would have let off the newscast with my show, I decided that probably wouldn't have been a good idea. But at the end of the day, nobody got sick. Everybody had fun. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you went to a drive-in show and you're listening to this right now, if you went to a drive-in show, chances are you're listening going, "Don, that was a cool experience."
Dude. I had a blast.
If you did, yeah, and a lot of people were afraid to do it and sat it out on the sidelines. And if you're listening, you really missed a cool experience.
There was a couple different ones. I know Garth Brooks did one where you just pulled in, you watched a video. Okay, that was cool, whatever. But the ones where you actually went and saw the artist, those were the ones that we're talking about. Those were the amazing ones. Don had one out here at the McHenry Drive-In. It was Aaron Lewis from Stain and Sully Erna from Godsmack together. And they were just kind of going back and forth, sharing stories. It's amazing. You got to sit in the car. You can sit outside. You got your own little area, man. It was phenomenal. Then we went back and saw Jay and Silent Bob did a live podcast there. We went and saw that.
That was mine. Yeah, that was mine.
Yeah, and that was another amazing one. Just be able to sit there and just watch all of it. Just them sound stage and freeze their asses off and talk to everybody. So
well, and you know what's funny, when I talked to the artist after the show, every single artist that I worked with in the drive-in world loved the experience we presented. A lot of it had to do with the fact that we had packed parking lots. I mean, you brought up the Aaron Lewis show. We sold out the first one in record time. We added a second matinee or late night show that night. I think I can't remember. Eliza Schlesinger, the comedian. We sold out her first show, which was the night show, in record time. Ended up getting a hold of her agent, who got a hold of her. And I'm like, "Hey, is Eliza up to doing a 3:00 afternoon show?" And they thought it was whacked. And they're like, "Well, how does that work?" And I'm like, "Because we didn't use the movie theater screen. We used these incredibly cool LED video walls that work just as well at 9:00 in the morning as they do at 9:00 at night, and they're crystal clear. And everybody in the lot could see the show, and it worked. You know, a 3:00 in the afternoon show worked just as well as an 8:00 show. And so we did those, and then that crazy, last show of the year at the McHenry Outdoor was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, the podcast, and Kevin and Jay could not have been more thrilled when they got off stage. They came, I honestly believe that they're being sincere. They were like, "Dude, that perhaps was the coolest show we ever did." And if you were at the show, because we used the movie screen for that show, we actually used that enormous 100-foot or whatever it is, 120-foot tall movie screen, and you could be 400 yards away, and it was like you were in your living room.
Oh yeah, dude.
And yet the cool thing was you had that act live right underneath the movie screen on that little stage that we had set up. So
it was
man,
cool
you know,
because
and
at that point they actually have taken the stereo or the speakers out at one point, because you guys, that when you first started, you had the actual music playing out of a PA system, and I know that the neighbors started saying, "All right, too loud," and it went back to the old drive-in style where you just turn into like 89.8 or whatever in your car, and there's the music. So that was really cool for the Jay and Silent Bob thing, because you just turn on your radio, it's like your AM dial or whatever, and you're sitting there just chilling in the car listening to it like you would a regular podcast. So that was really neat.
And actually for that show, I'm going to correct you on that. That was our original plan from day one, was not to use a PA.
Nice.
And what it created for us was this awesome situation that all we had to do was bring in a portable stage, a small amount of lighting, and then video cameras to be able to shoot them into the movie projection booth, and then the movie projection booth beam the picture onto the screen. To be honest with you, that was a really affordable show for us to produce. And if we found artists that were willing to do more podcasts, I would actually jump back into the drive-in business and do those shows, because that format works so well in the drive-in movie theater parking lot. By the way, since if Scott Dean is listening right now from the McHenry Outdoor Drive-In Theater, I like to pat him on the back because he's the greatest guy you could actually ever want to partner with on a show. He's one of the most wonderful people that I got to meet during the awful COVID window, and he was so accommodating for us. But at the end of the day, I think I told him, the Disco Biscuits. I came up to him at the last show, and I think we all knew that the drive-in the drive-in concert business was probably going to come to a screeching halt. And who knows if it ever goes back into that venue again. But I leaned over to Scott and I said, "Hey, Scott, did I ever tell you this last fall? And if I did, forgive me for reiterating, but in 2020, during the COVID window from March through December 31st of 2020, the #1 concert venue in the entire state of Illinois was the McHenry Outdoor Drive-In Theater."
That is awesome.
and honestly, he looked at me and he was like, "Serious? Serious?" And I'm like, "Serious. Serious." You did, between me and the other guy, I think he had, in 2020, I think there were 14 concerts that played his venue. And that was only in the window of literally June through September. And then I had that October. And then I had that last show of the year on November 1st with Jay and Silent Bob. When it was
Genesee started doing some shows, but they took over that small theater next door and did the little social distance shows. That was kind of cool. We did a couple of those, or one.
Yeah, no, and I booked a couple of those shows.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I booked the Nielsen Trust. So that was called the Genesee Street Cabaret, and it was 100 people, because that was all that was allowed in that small space. And honestly, I didn't make it out to that show, but I did make it out to the Peterick and Friends. I forgot the title of the show. It was Jim Peterick from Survivor and Carl G. Marisi, my friend from the Buckinghams. They did this really special show, again, 100 people. And I have to admit, those shows really worked. And kudos to the Genesee and everybody involved there, because that filled a void for a lot of people, and nobody else was doing shows. McHenry Outdoor Drive-In was lighting it up, and then the Genesee hopped on board. And I have great pride in what we all did when we needed to do something, stepped up to the plate. And now we're here.
Yep. I was just showing a picture of Christopherson, you and Christopherson on the screen. One of the funniest stories I think you've ever told me in all the time that we kind of known each other is about him and Willie having a house in Hawaii together. And when the wives go grocery shopping, how they drop them off at each other's house and they kind of babysit each other while they go grocery shopping.
I remember Chris's wife, Lisa, telling me that story, and Chris was in the room right next to me. And I was asking him a whole bunch of questions about, like, the early days and basically, again, taking kids out on the road. Well, Mr. Christopherson's memory had been impacted over the years, courtesy of an illness that he's had and some other things. But at the end of the day, he looked at me and he goes, "If you got any questions, you got to ask my wife, because she knows the answers." So I started talking to Lisa about it, and I'm like, I know Willie's got a house in Hawaii, and I know Chris has a house. So I'm like, hey, Lisa, does Chris hang out with Willie at all? And she goes, oh, hell yeah. And same deal. She was like, yeah, occasionally when we're in town, we know we're both there. I will drive him to Willie's house, drop him off for basically a play day.
That is so funny.
Yeah, and it's fun, man. And God bless Chris Christopherson. I believe he's now called it a day and retired.
Man.
And it breaks my heart. But I'll tell you why it doesn't completely break my heart. I like to see artists calling it a day when they have the ability to call it.
Yeah.
Before it gets too late, which will lead me into our next story, which I probably wasn't planning on talking about, but this is an artist that I have such profound respect for, and one of my favorite acts throughout the years, both growing up as a kid, watching his show on television every Saturday night. I think it was on Saturday nights on CBS, and getting to be a part of his true farewell tour. So the artist we're talking about is Glen Campbell.
I was hoping you were going to say him.
And I like, it's been years now, and Glenn has been dead for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I think, at this point. But I got so lucky to do his last 2 Chicago area shows at the Rialto Square Theater in Joliet, and there wasn't a ticket to be had. Show sold out, and the reason that they sold out was quite simple. When he announced his farewell tour, he announced that he had Alzheimer's.
Yep.
And he had full-blown Alzheimer's. And little did we know until I actually got to work with him on those 2 days, and actually the day before the shows, when he came into town, how bad it was and how bad his memory was impacted. But he was such a dream to work with. And, the show days were very difficult because his crew and his family members who were part of his band, and his wife, who was diligently standing on the side of the stage, both shows. And they had to worry every song when it ended, because he would get lost on stage sometimes and wouldn't know where he was at. And he had these monitors all the way across the stage. So no matter where he went, the words for the songs were there. So in case he forgot, which was frequent, he would be able to look down and see the words. But the most amazing thing, and I guess that's the cruel oddity of Alzheimer's, is that it didn't impact his guitar playing at all. And he was such an excellent guitar player. So between his ability to play guitar and his ability to actually just read the words from the monitor, he never really lost himself on stage. And the songs, every one of them, were so special. And a lot of tears were shed that night by me and others, everybody working the show, everybody in attendance. I mean, I swear I had every VIP and media personality in the Chicagoland area at my shows those nights. And if I looked out at the audience, there's some really famous people out there that all were shedding tears just like I was. But man, I'll tell you what, I give both Glenn and his entire family such credit, and for being able to do that and wanting to do that, and Glenn wanting to say goodbye one last time to his fans, and him still having the ability to do that. And he pulled it off, man, and he got through the tour. And I know things got worse and worse every day, and he ended up being put into a home, and, he died there. And, but man, I look back at him, and, I have so many awesome memories in this business, but right up at the top, that's going to be Glen Campbell.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I always heard good things about him, that he was really genuine with just as a person all around. So, and it's hard to see artists like that go. I mean, with Randy Travis, I was a huge Randy Travis fan, and then to see him, how he's faded over the last few years too. And it's just hard to see some artists that you really love when it's kind of they're reaching their end. So
well, and I think we need to go back, because I think we got off the track. But the reason that I brought him up is that I'm going to borrow this phrase from Kenny Rogers, because I did his farewell tour as well. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And Kenny will be a great, great ending example for this story, because a lot of artists don't know when to call it quits. They don't have the ability. They love what they do so much. It's not a normal person's job. It's, everybody always asks me, well, why is that artist still touring? Because if you had their job and you were paid what they are paid, and you were rewarded with a standing ovation when you walked out on stage, when you perform your songs and when you left the stage, you wouldn't want to leave it.
Better than drugs. And
yeah, man. Yeah, right.
I mean, look at Willie, dude. Willie's gonna drop on stage one night. I mean, he has to. I mean, that's all he has ever known is the road. And I feel like if you take Willie off the road, he's just gonna die quicker. I mean, because you're gonna take his only love away from him.
Very, very true. And you're bringing up an artist that I've done countless shows with, and I over the years I've had that conversation. I'd like to say it's been at least 5 years since Willie and I talked about retirement, and I stopped bringing it up because it was very evident to me that there was no retirement plan. And when the end came, the end probably would come on stage, or it would come on the tour bus, or he'd wake up in the hotel the next morning and he wouldn't wake up in the hotel the next morning. And so that's how the artist, but like Kenny Rogers was a great example of an act that knew when to hold them and knew when to fold them. And I got to do one of his last dates in the area in La Crosse, Wisconsin. It was on his farewell tour and it was his Christmas tour. And Kenny and I went back all the way into the mid 90s. He was my first full-blown arena act. I had built this. I did one show with him, and his main guy who controlled his touring liked me so much that he gave me a shot at almost any market that I wanted to do. And I ended up doing every single year. I would do 5 or 6 of the Christmas shows, and it was a highlight for me every year because Kenny was the king. You know, he was a big celebrity, number one, and people loved him so much. And not only that, his Christmas show, if his Christmas show didn't put you into the Christmas spirit, you in fact were Scrooge and you needed to check out immediately.
I have a picture I actually posted on my Instagram probably a couple months back. Me and Kenny Rogers, it was like 1999. It was one of his Christmas shows. I was backstage. It was at my uncle's stage in West Virginia. I'm wearing a Pantera t-shirt.
Nice.
I'm wearing this big Pantera snake shirt, and it's me and Kenny Rogers hanging out. I'm like, this is me. That was just me in 99 or 98, whenever this picture was.
Kenny was the most accommodating artist. Like if I had guests backstage, and Lord knows when I was doing Kenny Rogers back in the day, just my family alone, anytime I did them at an area venue like the Rockford Metro Center, for example, all my wife's aunts and uncles would pile into a couple of cars and come out, and I'd get them backstage. And it was funny because Kenny would always save my group for the last. Like he might meet 100 people backstage before a show, but they always made sure to save my group every single night that I did a show, no matter what the city was. My group was last because Kenny wanted to spend a couple of extra minutes with them. And he was so gracious with his time, and all the wonderful pictures I have now with my deceased aunts and uncles who've gone on to higher ground. And all the pictures that I look at in my book, they all seem to have Kenny in them. So when the time came and I knew that this was the final tour and this is going to be my final show with Kenny, and Kenny walked into the building that night and he recognized me and he was like, "Oh, I didn't know this was your show tonight." And I, we had this like fun, joking relationship, and it was sarcastic at the same time. And I'm like, "Well, whose did you think it would be?" And, we spent a lot of time during the day together, but man, I'll tell you what, he was hobbling. You could see the pain in his eyes. His body was falling apart and all the surgeries. He was a former like semi-professional tennis player. He was really seriously a great tennis player. And I think that the court had beaten up his knees and his hips and his lower extremities to the point where he just couldn't deal with it anymore. And at the end of the night, he did an awesome show on stage, and I'm just recalling it. And I was there to greet him when he came down the stairs, and a couple of his crew guys had their flashlights out to light the area, to light me up. And he walked down the stairs and he looked at me and he said, "Don, it's time." And what a pleasure it's been. And with that, I walked him to the tour bus. I don't think we said another word. And I said goodnight as the door closed. And that was it, man. And, that's the way I hope all artists, like Elton John, I actually really appreciate the way that he's going out on his so-called farewell tour. But we'll see, in fact, if he holds true and makes it a farewell tour, because farewell tour has very loose meaning.
I think we saw him 2 years ago in Ohio, and it was supposed to be his farewell. And
well, I think
he's like kissed.
I think by the time this tour is done next year, he will have played the Chicago market
like 3 times.
These 6 or 7 shows and he's played the Allstate Arena, the United Center, and now he's playing Soldier Field. But God bless him. He said he was going to go as many places as was physically possible. And I think when it's all said and done, he'll have visited over 300 cities on this tour. So that's the way. And you know what? If I've never met Elton before, but if I had the opportunity to meet him before the end of the tour, my only parting words would be, please mean it and call it a day. When you say farewell, call it a day. Don't pull a Cher on me.
Well,
don't pull a Cher.
Yeah. Kiss has been back like 6 times, I think.
Yeah. Don't pull a Kiss, but don't pull a Cher. Because I think when she can't even use the word farewell anymore, because everybody knows there's absolutely no meaning to that word in the title of her show. So, don't use farewell if you don't really mean it.
Yeah.
If you want to say it's near the end of the road, and maybe that's Willie Nelson, Tony Bennett. Let's talk about Tony for a minute. Had the privilege of working with him over the last 15 years. And one of his last, or I think his second to last show in the Chicagoland area will probably turn out to be mine at the Rialto. And I think I did him in March or April of 2019. And he just turned 95 years old, and he's announced that he's had Alzheimer's since 2016. And I could certainly see it over the last couple of shows that I did. I could see it in the eyes, but at the end of the night, every single night he put on this incredible performance, and he didn't use any cheat sheets. He didn't use any monitors. I don't know how in the world he remembers all the words to songs. So I think he wanted to make it he told me personally, his goal was 100. He wanted to celebrate his 100th birthday like George Burns did. And then he told me, he said, I told my crew, when I turn 100, we're going to do a show. And then you're all going to have to look for a job after that.
That is awesome. And these stories you've been sharing has been phenomenal, dude. These are awesome stories. I love them.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks. And you know what? And that's what I have. And that, when I look back at all the wonderful moments, but what I have are my memories. And what I have are my memories of putting on awesome shows for people who paid real money every single night to see these shows.
Well, you're in it for all the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. I mean, you're in it to bring people enjoyable moments, dude. Like, just like you said with the drive-in shows, you thought like, okay, what can I do to bring some kind of music to these people that have not had nothing for months? And for you, your sanity, your outlet was posting a picture a day on Facebook with an artist. It's that for some of us, for music fans, we didn't have much. Like, we were trying to get through and everything else. So when we had those drive-in shows, so thank you for that. It meant so much to us. Like, we got the live music in our veins again. Like, we got to feel that again. And I love that. So,
I think we should now spend a couple of times. I think that's a great segue into where we're at today. And that's appreciating what you have when you have it. And we all need to remember that. And I think we are all doing a better job of it. But I think we all need to take a step back sometimes when you're in a restaurant. Because I said this day one, when the restaurants reopened again, people are going to have new appreciation for restaurants.
Our percentage of tip.
And they did. Now, and listen, they did. For the first 30 to 60 days, they did. But I honestly believe, because I go to restaurants a lot, I believe people have already forgotten that, and they're first to criticize and be critical, just like they were pre-COVID. Everybody, if you know what, and I may even be guilty of that on a rare occasion where the service is really bad, but then I stop myself and go, listen, it's hard to get people to work in these restaurants. COVID has really impacted the restaurant business, the entertainment business. And at the end of the day, maybe the food's not as good as it once was. Take a step back, because it sure beats the hell out of what we had in 2020. We had a big fat fucking zero. Excuse the language.
Dude, we had nothing. And I mean, hopefully we keep going in a good path where we don't have to go back that way. No more steps back. So
no, and let's talk about that for a second. So we're not gonna get political, because there are two sides to every story. But at the end of the day, in the entertainment business right now, where we are at, I'm going to tell you where we're at. I'm going to tell you where I think we're headed. and I don't like where we're headed right
No,
this
yeah,
second.
I've been seeing a lot of
We're not heading to a stoppage of shows, and God forbid if we ever get to that point again, but we can stop that from happening. And there's two different ways. One, most likely when we go back indoors for shows in the next month or so, face masks are going to be a requirement.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. It's going to happen. I don't like them. Our bands don't like them. Our crews don't like them. None of our fans like them. I get it. But at the end of the day, if it works and it helps to stop this god awful virus from spreading, let's do it. And then if we keep going down the road we're going, and I'm watching our competitors do it on a daily basis, I have a feeling a lot of the buildings that we do shows in, we don't control the rules of the building in most cases, but we work with our partners to come up with a game plan that works. I have a great feeling right now that in the next month, we're going to require vaccination cards from our customers, and it sucks.
I was
It
going to ask you
sucks.
about that because I see a lot of
Sucks.
bars in Nashville right now doing that, and a lot of different, well, even artists. Jason Isbell just went out a day or two ago and said he refuses to play any shows if the venue or promoter does not require a vax card or 72-hour negative test.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
won't even play your market at all.
yeah.
Crazy.
We're not there. I was working on a deal yesterday with an act that I won't mention right now.
Yeah.
They're a Hall of Fame act that put it into the deal terms that he has the right to be able to mandate. And between the financial requirements of doing him as an artist and seeing it in writing, I wasn't ready for it. So yesterday I put a big fat pass on the deal when it came my way. And it killed me to do it, but I wasn't ready for it. But get ready, everybody, because right now, the way this variant is acting, and today the numbers in Illinois were the highest they've been in 4 months. I don't think that there's a way around it. And I think our partners, and I'm going to start with buildings that we don't do shows in. Broadway in Chicago announced last week mandatory vaccination card. Or
okay, they did. Okay.
They did. Or proof of negative test 72 hours in advance. Summerfest just did the same thing. I think we're days away from our competitors, and I'm not going to mention their names right now, doing the same thing. And once they do it, all of our buildings will follow suit.
So
we got a huge dilemma, everybody. I want you at my shows. I want my seats filled. I honestly think that if you are a fan of live music, you've got to help us when we need help, and we need your help right now. And that's masking up. And if you haven't gotten the vaccination, I'm not going to get into the politics and everything else, because you know what? To each his own. But if you plan on going to shows this fall, you're going to need a vaccination to get into shows. And I don't know how long that's going to last, or you're going to have to go through our testing process, and it might be 24 to 48 hours prior to show. So do you want to do that every time you want to go to a show? You've got to go to CVS early enough. You've got to get there within a certain window and swab out. I think it's just a whole lot easier to get the vaccine. So
well, I know I saw some places where they're getting like the 10 or 15-minute rapid test, and like you filter in. If you have a vaccine, you go straight into the show and you're good. If you don't, you go into these tents and you actually have to take a test, wait 10, 15 minutes. If it's negative, you're on your way. If it's positive, you can't come in. So I've seen that, but I'm like, this is just insane just to do all this. Bring back drive-in shows now. But,
and here's the reality of it. As much as I think that the experience is really cool, and I would love to do a show or two in the future, in McHenry and a couple of other places, it's not the way our business is set up, and the business model doesn't work financially for us to allow us to stay.
They were fun, but there's no money in it at all. It was more just for people's sanity, I want to say, just to get them out there and give them some music.
I mean, it paid our salaries for a while, and it paid to keep the lights on in the office. But at the end of the day, the model doesn't work, and we do indoor shows for a living for the most part. And at the end of the day, if that's what's required to produce a safe environment for my fans, for my bands, my crews, my venue staff, we're going to do whatever is necessary. And if it requires a vaccination card, you're either going to do it or you're going to wait a year until things go back to normal again. So you've got a decision to make, but I'm hoping you make the decision that makes the most sense, because if you're listening right now and you love going to shows, there's an obvious answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it is.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean,
Amen.
you have to
Amen.
or wait it out for a while and see what happens down the road. But it's definitely, I see it more and more venues going into it. We have tickets for Frankie Valli in October, man. I'm just like, hopefully this guy holds on and it doesn't get delayed again. I'm like, he's getting up there in age. So I always promise my mom, I'm like, I'm going to take you to see Frankie Valli. So, and we were supposed to go see him October 2020. He got pushed back a year. So we're hoping we make it that far.
Well, and you will, you know, as a matter of fact, my friend is doing that show and he's done a couple shows recently with them. And I've seen footage of the shows. Frankie's performing awesome. So we can all help these shows happen.
Yeah.
We can all be a part of the process. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to thank you from the bottom of my heart too. It means a lot to me right now. And, you know, I think I've gotten into some squabbles with some friends, and I don't quite agree completely with people's opinions. But at the end of the day, that's my opinions. But I'm going to tell you from not only from a professional standpoint, but what I do for a living. So if you're a friend of mine and you're fighting the vaccine, just do me a big favor. Don't ever talk to me about coming to one of my shows again. We will be friends forever, but you will never come to one of my shows again, because you couldn't help me out. And you weren't willing to hear me out in a time of need. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is a time of need. Amen.
I agree with things. No, I agree, man. I agree with all that, dude. And definitely look into it. And like you said, each their own, think about it. But like you said, man, you want to go out there and make the world a better place, but you want to keep live music out there. And the people that live on live music too, and look forward to it. I know for a year there, a lot of the unsung heroes, production crews, the lights guys, the sound guys, the video guys, all the guys that really didn't do much. It was kind of cool. I've mentioned this to a couple of people. Every now and then there's been times, and I'm thankful for all my Patreons out there that are listening, that I've had after shows, and a couple of times artists have been iffy about doing the after shows. And Ashlyn Craft was one that I had on. I was talking to her, and this is when her and I first started talking. And I was like, you know what? I'll offer you $100 if you come on, just do 3 songs on the after show. She goes, oh, okay, I'll do that. And they didn't turn it down. They took it. And then when I went to go take out the checkbook and write out a check for $100, she had us make it out to her production team. And she bought lunch from them all one day. And I'm like, that right there made me fall in love with her, because I like, she could took that money, done whatever, like kept it for herself or anything else, but she had me make out that check to her production team and mail it to them for lunch one day for all of them. I'm like, now that was cool. So that's one reason why I'm like, I'm behind her, because she's just a badass. And now she's for Zach Brown. So
you know, and she's not the only one that's been doing that.
Yeah.
Something too, that when I say you're supporting my business, you're also supporting the business of a lot of my friends that are in this world as well. You know, they're either agents, managers, production guys, marketing people. But keep in mind, when COVID shut us down, almost everybody in my business lost their jobs. They all went on unemployment. Some of them were not invited back. In fact, quite a few of them were not invited back to their job. They all had to work hard. A lot of them found new jobs. I don't want to see my friends in this business have to go through what we went through as a business last year, because it can't happen a second time. If we get shut down as a business a second time, this business will never recover in the way it has. It will never come back to where it was pre-COVID, because we're not back to where we were.
No,
by
not
any means.
Not even close.
Pre-COVID. And in fact, it may be years until we get there. But if we have a second train fall off the track again, and this happens to us again, God forbid. But what we're saying right here is that a lot of people's livelihoods depend on people cooperating. You know, to create that wonderful entertainment experience for people, it takes a lot of people to move the needle, and those people need jobs. And the way we keep them employed is by doing shows. And the way we keep doing shows is by protecting one another.
Mm-hmm.
So you got me fired up, man.
I love it. So being fired up, we're going to move into our sponsored section of the night before we wrap everything up. Is our pod decks section of the night, or And I normally pull 2 cards. I'm just going to do the one tonight. So my question is, what's the biggest high pressure situation you've ever found yourself in while promoting a show? It could be maybe a last minute concert.
Oh my
Anything,
God.
but pre-COVID. All this is pre-COVID. So
Pre-COVID.
the biggest high pressure situation you've ever found yourself in while promoting a show.
You know, I think this is gonna be an artist-driven story, and she also shows up in another category that you had put on a list to me originally when you asked me who the biggest diva was to work with. So I think
that was a question I was going to ask too. The biggest
well,
diva
I think
you
I'm gonna marry these two. So we're gonna segue right into this. So she single-handedly created probably the most stressful situation for me twice. Let alone once, but twice. So we'll go back. So this particular artist, and God rest her soul, because there wasn't anyone like her. And I'm very lucky to say that I did get an opportunity to end my career on the right note with her before it all ended. But we're going to start with the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. So if you're a friend of mine, you can probably tune out right now because you probably heard the story a couple dozen times by now. But at the end of the day, so a long time ago, probably 20 years ago, my very first show was in Rockford, Illinois, at the Coronado Theater, and it was yeah, man, I love it. It's right up at the top of my list of favorite venues, so we could talk about that too. But the show was nearly sold out. One day I got a call from her agent, and God rest his soul because he's passed on as well. And he was like, "Hey, Don, it's Dick Allen." And I'm like, "Hi, Mr. Allen, how are you?" And he goes, "I got a problem. I got to play this voicemail message for you." And I'm like, "Okay, go ahead and play it for me." And beep. "Hi, this is Aretha Franklin, Dick. And you can go ahead and cancel that Rockford." I'm not going to do her voice because I usually do her voice. And in fairness, I do such a poor Aretha Franklin that nobody else needs to hear it. So you need to cancel that show, Dick. I heard it's a dump and I'm not playing there. Click. And there was this quiet pause. And I'm like, "Dick, what is she talking about?" And he goes, "I don't know. She's batty." And I actually do a better Dick than I do Aretha. And anyways, I'm like, "Well, you know as well as I that the Coronado is a beautiful palace. It's actually called the crown jewel of Rockford, Illinois." Now, many years before that, before it had gone through a major renovation, it was a dump. In fact, I started my career, my very first shows were at the Coronado. And so it was a dump. So she must have had an old memory. Somebody must have told her. And I said, "Dick, you just got to get a hold of her and say, listen, that was the old Coronado. This is the new Coronado. It's the crown jewel. Everybody wants to play there. It's beautiful." So we tried and tried and tried and left message after message after message. And days went by. And now we're almost sold out. I'm continuing to sell tickets to the show that was about a month away. And I'm like, "Dick, you've got to get a hold of her." And he goes, "Don, I can't get a hold of her. She doesn't return any of my calls." And I'm like, "Oh my God." And I'm like, "Can you tell me where she's playing this weekend?" So he gave me her venue site, which was some casino, I think. Anyways, I managed to get a hold of the venue and the hotel where I knew she was staying. And I sent this beautiful care package with a Coronado book with the history of the Coronado, couple of champagne glasses, a bottle of champagne. And basically all you had to do was look at the front of the book. You didn't even actually have to open it up yet. Just had to look at the cover of the book, and it would tell you everything that you needed to know, that this was not a dump and that it was in fact a jewel. And I delivered it. I know it was received by her with no acknowledgement. And a few more days passed, and I said, "Dick, have you heard from Aretha?" And he goes, "No, I haven't heard anything." And I'm like, "All right, listen, I'm going to have to hit the airwaves and I'm going to have to cancel the show. But I got a big mouth, and everybody in Rockford, Illinois, and probably the entire Midwest is going to know what happened." And he goes, "Don, do what you need to do." And I was crushed. I was crushed that he actually said that to me. I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You're throwing in the towel on this act. How could you do this to me?" And so the next day I, gathered the troops and we made the announcement. and the announcement on the press release said basically something along the lines of the show has been canceled. And then we went on to, my quote was, Aretha calls Coronado a dump. And that ended up being the front page story on the Rockford Register-Star. And it ended up going as viral could be back in that day. It ended up traveling throughout the entire Midwest. I did boatloads of interviews with morning shows. I did all the TV stations in Rockford. I mean, I'd walk into a room. I remember going to a wedding once and somebody introduced me at this table. And they're like, "Oh, it's you. It's the guy, the Coronado dump guy." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me. That's me." So I was out money, I was out all of our marketing costs, our profits on the show, and some other expenses. And I wanted to be compensated. Well, I couldn't get any answer from the Aretha camp. So I ended up suing her in court. So to this day, she is the only artist that I actually sued in court. And believe it or not, it was a relatively small sum of money. I mean, I can't disclose the number right now, but anyways.
Yeah.
So she hired a really expensive law firm near me to fight me, and it stayed in court for over a year. And my attorney finally called me one day and he said, "Listen, they made an offer." And I'm like, "Oh, good." And he goes, No, not good. It's for pennies on the dollar. And I said, "You've got to be kidding." And he cut me off mid-sentence and he said, "Listen, she's just going to fight this until there's no money left to be had. And then at the end of the day, they're going to call the contract into play." And there were some terms in the contract. Contracts are written in favor of the artist most of the time, not the promoter or the venue. And they're going to call these clauses into effect that were signed off on. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, Aretha never signed the contract and returned it to me. So I didn't have an artist sign. So I ended up taking the money, and I swore if I ever had the opportunity down the road, I would get even with her. Well, fast forward 8 or 9 years, 10 years later, I get a call from another agent and a friend of mine, and he goes, "Hey, Don, it's whoever, I now represent Aretha." I'm like, "You represent Aretha?" Because yeah, I'd like to do her at the Chicago Theater, and I'd like you to be her promoter. And I'm like, "Do you understand what I went through?" And he goes, "Everybody understands what you went through, Don, because you told the whole world." And he goes, "I really think you should do it. She's coming into town for Oprah Winfrey's final show, final live taping at the United Center, and she's going to be one of the special guests on the show. And I think that the media attention," and I'm like, "I vowed I would never work with her, but I would get even. The only way I can get even with her is to work with her again." So here I am. I took the challenge, man. I put the offer in. The offer got accepted. She had no recollection as to who I was or who my company was. And I ended up booking this date, and it sold out rapid fire, man. I mean, it sold out as fast as we could print tickets. And I will give her credit. Up until the night of the show, she was actually pretty accommodating. And in fact, to the point where my wife was a big fan of Oprah and wanted to be at the finale, and she arranged tickets for my wife and I to sit in her guest seats that night. So I thought, man, here I am. I'm on the gravy train now, and everything's going to be smooth, and I'm going to have the most awesome experience with Aretha, and we're going to erase all those bad memories. And man, was I wrong.
If you guys are in the chat too, I did share a link for an article that I just found online where Don talks about the full story too.
Yeah. So
that's phenomenal. Yeah, it's all over the place.
So before the show, Aretha's agent Dick wanted me to come back and say hi to Aretha. So I go back into this little closet that we use for our production office. But in this particular case, because it was on the ground floor, Aretha used it so she wouldn't have to walk up any stairs at the Chicago Theater. And so I walk into this little room and it's literally the size of a broom closet. And I'm right on top of her. And I'm like, "Miss Franklin, Don Kronberg, nice to meet you. Such a pleasure to meet you. And thank you so much for the beautiful flowers." Well, the flowers in her dressing room are actually requirements for the show. So I don't know why she actually thanked me, because if I didn't actually put them in there, I probably would have had a problem with those too. And so she thanked me. And so I said, "You know what? I'm going to let you be. The show's going to start in a few minutes. Good luck tonight. Have a great show. Thank you very much." So I'm standing side of stage now between the dressing room and the entrance to the stage. The lights go down. Her band walks on stage to do the extended introduction to the show. Aretha comes out of the dressing room. She walks right by me in the dark. She's standing about 10 feet in front of me. And this is where my problems begin. She turns to me. She walks right up to my face and she says, "Are you messing with me?" And I went, "Excuse me? Are you messing with me?" And I'm like, "Excuse me again. What do you mean by that?" She goes, "Do you feel that air blowing overhead?" And I'm like, "Nope, I don't feel any air blowing overhead because we're not allowed to have air conditioning units on when the Queen is performing on stage." So I said, "No, ma'am, there is no air blowing." "Well, what is that I'm feeling blowing on me right now?" I'm like, "Ma'am, I have no clue as to what you're feeling." And she said, "If you want to mess with me, I can just walk right out on stage right now and tell them that the promoter didn't read the contract and the rider, and we're not going to be able to do the show tonight." And I said, "Ma'am, you don't want to do that because that is not the case. And I'm not doing anything wrong. And in fact, I'm going to get the building engineer right now and stay right here and I'll be right back." And I literally ran full speed looking for one of my building guys. "Dude, get back here really quick. You've got to certify that the air conditioning's not on." So I go to grab him. We run backstage and she had walked on stage to start the show. So here we are standing off on the side of the stage and I am dripping bullets right now. It's hotter than Hades in the theater. It's middle of May, no air conditioning, and it's actually a warm May day. We've got 3,300 people packed elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder, whatever, next to one another, and we're all dripping sweat. She starts her show off. She is just tearing it apart, and I can tell she's having a great time. And here I am going, what the heck happened to me? Why did it happen? And why did she forget like instantaneously? So I don't think anything of it. I basically kick it to the side. I let this guy go. And here I am at intermission. And it's kind of funny because you remember where you were at when things happen.
Mhm.
And I'm talking to Jesse Jackson and Judge Mathis from TV in a hallway. And Jesse's talking to me about potentially doing shows at Operation Push. And I'm not making any of this crap up. You can't make any of this stuff up. And all of a sudden I'm back there and one of her security guys, she had just gotten out of intermission and the band had started again on stage. And one of her security guys ran back and said, "Miss Franklin wants to see you on stage right now in the quick change booth." So you can access the quick change booth that an artist uses from the back of the stage, and you walk through a back curtain and there you are. And so anyways, I walked through the curtain and we've got furniture in there for her so she can change outfits, so she can fix her makeup. And there she is. She's looking at herself in the mirror and she can see me in her reflection. She turns around and she drops an F-bomb at me. And I'm like, "What?" She goes, "Are you messing with me?" Except she used a different word.
Yeah.
And she walks right up, man, right to my face. She is face to face with me right now. She goes, "Apparently you're challenging the Queen," or something like that. I can't remember the exact words right now. And I'm like, "Ma'am, I am not. I swear to God, I am not doing that. This air conditioning system hasn't been on since the beginning of the evening, and it won't go on again until you leave the building tonight. And I can guarantee you, if you're feeling any breeze right now, it's because there's a multitude of doors in these old venues, and they're opening in and out, and they're opening from the street, and you're getting airflow, and all of a sudden air makes its way in." And that's truly what happens.
Yeah.
And to make my point more known, I pull out a Bic lighter that one of the guys from the venue gave me, and I flick it, and I go, "Ma'am, do you see that flame? It's not moving. Not moving." And she goes, "I don't give a crap about that flame. I feel air." And again, she threatens me. She goes, "I'm going to walk back out on stage right now and tell these people that the show is off tonight, that it's over. And it's all because of the promoter." And I said, "You just don't want to do that, because I am doing everything in my power, and I'm guaranteeing you that there's no air conditioning on, and I will go get the venue manager right now. And in fact, I'm going to go get the venue manager right now." And I bolt and I grab him in like 15 seconds. I have him on my wrist, attached to me, and I pull him into the curtain while the Queen had walked back out on stage. And so we sat side of stage right in front, and we watched her just absolutely tear it up like nobody else has torn it up before. And she went on and just absolutely crushed it that night. And I ended up making a lot of money. So in essence, I got even with the queen that night. And at the end, the agent goes, "Miss Franklin would like to thank you in the dressing room." And I'm like, seriously? There is no way I am walking back into that dressing room. You can give her my regards. And that was it. So now I am what is it when you can't get enough pain? You are what kind of person? When you keep going back for more?
Dumbass.
You dumbass, yeah. All right. So fast forward up a few years, and here's the dumbass right here. He gets a call from yet another agent that I'm friends with in the business. "Hey, Don, it's so-and-so. I now represent Aretha Franklin." And I'm like, "Congratulations." And he goes, "I see that a few years back you had done her at the Chicago Theater." Somewhere in between, though, she had actually come back and played for another promoter, which is really funny. But this was in 2016 or 2017 now. And the agent was like, "Listen, sales were great the last time she played here. I don't know how you ended up with her." I said, "I ended up horribly. She was a horrible wreck to work with." And he goes, "How about hopping back on board one more time? Because I don't think that there's going to be that many more shows from Aretha." And I really sat back and I went, you know what? I think I just like getting beat up. And I think, this is the moral of the story is, as bad as it can get in my business, how come I keep going back for more? And this has happened to me repeatedly over the years, but more with Aretha Franklin than anybody. So I ended up doing her last show. I think it was in 2017 at the Chicago Theater. She came to town, huge sellout. We had problems with the show. The original date had to be rescheduled because she didn't want to travel in inclement weather, and we got into it. She likes to show up in town like 5 days before a show to get ready. And she really is a perfectionist, and she stays in a hotel room that is over 100 degrees. The heat's got to be up in the room, no air conditioning, hot air. Like her crew that works with her, her security detail, they sweat their rear ends off
Oh my God.
every night that they work with her. And they tell me the stories that they have to keep the windows rolled up in the car when they travel and the heat's on because she likes to protect her voice. So that ended up being my last show. And it was kind of funny because we ended up on such a great note. I ended up going to her hotel room that afternoon and settling up her cash portion of the bill. So that was the unique thing about doing an Aretha Franklin show, is that you settled with the queen herself. You paid her direct.
Whoa.
And that particular day, she wanted me to come to the hotel room and take care of the cash requirements in the afternoon. And by the way, it's a large chunk of cash.
Yeah.
So I've got it stuffed down my shorts, man. It's really sexy looking. If you saw me walking down the street, I wasn't packing what you think I'm packing. So I get up to her hotel room, and her security detail in the room right before her lets me in, and they tell me to have a seat at this enormous dining room table. She had this massive suite at the Drake Hotel, and the queen walks out, and it was kind of jarring because she walked out without a wig or makeup on. So I hadn't seen Aretha not made up before. And I got to see a woman, and I thought it was really cool because she wasn't embarrassed to show herself at that point. And she sat down across from me at the dining room table, and I pulled out this big stack of cash. Plus, I had a couple of old album covers that I wanted signed. So I thought it was a great opportunity for me to get albums signed. And I had them on the table as well. But it took her like an hour and a half to count the money because she'd start asking me questions. And then we'd get into this conversation. And we truly, at that point, had the only real conversation that we had ever had over the last 10 years. And I found it so enriching and rewarding for me. And, she answered almost any question that I asked her. And, that was one of those moments that, again, I'll take that with me to the grave, because I had hung in there throughout all these battles and lawsuits and threats of not playing. And here I am actually going to end my last performance with Aretha Franklin on a high note. And so I finished paying her. She said, "Well, it's time for me to start getting ready for the show. I'll see you down at the theater." And she came down and she waved to me when she walked in, and she used the same broom closet for a dressing room. And again, it seemed like Groundhog Day because Jesse Jackson was at the show. Judge Mathis was at the show. It was really weird. Jesse Jr. I'm just kind of recalling some of the guests
Yeah.
backstage. And she put on an unbelievable show. Unbelievable. I remember it. I have videos of that night, and it was such a wonderful memory. And then at the end of the night, after she had paid all of her band members, and by the way, she paid all of her band and crew members in cash personally herself before they left the venue. One by one, they would come into the dressing room, the door would close, and then the next person would come in and out. And it was a unique thing for me to see. I'd only seen it with a couple of artists before, but I'd never envisioned seeing Aretha do that. And then at the end of the night, I walked into the dressing room, and my only picture with her, I think it's somewhere out on Facebook, and I think you can find it pretty easy. You could tell she was tired. It's kind of this look like, all right, let's just take this picture so I can get out of here. We took the picture, and then I walked her up the steps, and I put her in the, as I was putting her in the limousine, she turned to me and she said, "You did a really nice job on my show tonight." And she got into the car and pulled away. And I went, man, if that was my last show, I gotta, I'm going to pat myself on the back here, because throughout all the trials and tribulations, I hung in there, and all of this nonsense that I had to put up with. But yet at the end of the day, when I look back on it now, I wouldn't have these awesome stories to tell if I didn't do it.
Did she ever tell her that you're the one from Rockford?
No, you know what?
Realize
Man,
it? No.
She was sued by so many people I found in the court system that she wouldn't have known me from Adam. So I choose to look back on it. My fond memory would be my last show, and how well it went, and how smoothly it went, and what a nice lady she was. And then I think she ended up passing away a year later, and I've got a signed album, and I've got multiple signed show posters, including the last show poster, the show poster before, and sadly, I don't have the Rockford poster, but my memories are forever there, and that's one of the greatest stories I have to share.
That's awesome, man. Actually, I think I found the last picture that you were talking about. Was she wearing a blue top?
I think she was, yeah.
Okay, I got it displayed right now for everybody that's looking.
Okay,
it's just phenomenal. It's a phenomenal story, and to know that she pays her out in cash, that's really cool too, because you really don't hear that anymore. It's like she kept things old school.
Well, and a lot of the black artists, so we could probably try to figure out a way to wrap this up tonight, because I can keep going and going and going. And maybe if I didn't completely alienate all of your listeners, maybe you'll have me back on it.
Oh yeah, we'll have to do it. We'll have to do some more, dude. I want to have you in studio sometime, and we can kind of bounce off each other with some good concert stories and stuff. I'd
love to be there, because you know what? When I look back in the background, it looks like it's Wayne's World a little bit.
Dude, you lost that whole museum.
Yeah, so I'm waiting for Wayne and Garth to come walking out any second. So
Wayne's World.
I think I have to have that experience with you sooner than later, and we can share some of these stories, and maybe we can talk about some of the other things that I realize we've been on this call for probably over an hour now.
Oh yeah, it's like we're definitely like
hour and a half. So I think
I'm having fun though.
We are having a lot of fun, and I think I've got so many more stories to tell.
We're definitely gonna do part two.
And we can talk about some of those awesome venues and some of the unbelievable shows that I did in these venues. Yeah. And I think that, in fairness to the listeners, we have a lot more to cover, and I think we should.
I agree with you, man. But before we move on, we got to do my hot seat. So every week I do a hot seat.
Okay.
We're gonna put 60 seconds on the clock, a little background noise.
I was bad at tests. Stop it. Stop it.
The first thing that pops in your head, just anything you can think of. The first vinyl you ever owned.
Kiss Double Platinum.
Hell yeah. What's your hometown famous for?
Al Capone, Michael Jordan, hot dogs.
All right. Hell yeah. What's well, hey, we already answered this earlier, but who has the best pizza anywhere you've been?
Man, again, I'm trying to be fair to everybody, so let's just go with Giordano's or Lou Malnati's. Let's make it a tie tonight.
All right. The strangest thing you've ever seen in the middle of the road?
Dead person once.
Oh man, that's a random one there. Okay, yeah. So I saw a picture, and that's why this question made it into my hot seat tonight. When you're at Bob Chin's, what's your go-to order?
Well, up until recently, it's always been king crab legs, but when they raised the price to $110 because nobody can get enough crab legs in the shipping crisis, so I had to settle for blackened halibut, which, by the way, I will order again.
Hell yeah, dude. We always do the dinner for two when we do like the 32-ounce porterhouse, dude, and then this crab legs. I want to go tomorrow. I'm so, man, that place is awesome. All right, what's one thing people buy you feel is a waste of money?
Insurance for their tickets if they're
Dude.
offered it. Just go to the show.
Yeah, let's go. All right, when attending a concert, not when you're working, where's the best seat in the house?
Ooh, man, it changes every show. But I'll give you generally my favorite when it comes to a theater, because I know that the clock is ticking. So I'd say middle of the main floor, 15 to 20 rows back, or first couple rows of the balcony or mezzanine that overhangs the main floor. Those are the two best spots.
I love the Lincoln seats, like especially at the Genesee Theater, right off to the side.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a backdrop, it sucks. But if there's a video wall, it sucks. But if you're just watching the performer, it's phenomenal. So, which format do you perform to listen to your music in? Streaming, CD, cassette, or a vinyl?
Well, it used to be vinyl, but right now it's streaming. You know, I'm hooked on Spotify, so I think it's Spotify streaming.
So, what slogan or jingle gets stuck in your head every time you hear it?
Oh, God almighty. Any one of the million jingles and commercials that we hear on TV. 588-2300 Empire.
I love that one. Yeah, definitely. Or the Glenn Lerner 222-2222 or whatever.
Yeah, there you go. Or the Eddie and Jobo commercials, because they're so god awful.
Eddie and Jobo, man, I miss those guys. Not miss them, but they're still around every now and then. All right, so my last question, and before we wrap everything up tonight, you've done some really cool stuff. The Aretha Franklin stories you shared tonight. You've been 31 years in the business, promoted some phenomenal artists, comedians. I mean, Don, you have one of the biggest hearts I've ever met from people. You're driven, you're motivated, you're passionate about this. What's still on your bucket list? What do you still want to achieve in this industry of being a concert promoter before you hang up the boots?
You know what, man? I think I've done it all. So I can honestly say if this business ended tomorrow, I've done a lot in 31 years, and I've satisfied myself and a lot of people around me. So
yeah, man.
I honestly, unless it was some new, completely whacked out, different type of music festival that doesn't exist right now, but I've done it all. And then the only other thing I wish if we could go back in time, I wish I had promoted Frank Sinatra.
Ooh, that would be a good one right there. That'd be a good one. I should have put that on my hot seat. One artist that you never promoted that you wished you would have.
There you go. Well, there you go.
Frank Sinatra. Yeah, I love that, man. I definitely love that. It's cool that you say that, or that you feel you've succeeded, that you're good and you're ready. You're ready. I mean, just ready.
Man. I can rest in peace knowing I would never have expected the journey that I've gotten out of this business. I had dreams many years ago. I never thought in a million years that I would be doing what I got to do, you know, that Jerry Seinfeld would be my first show, right, and all the legends that have come through my venues and that adorn my walls and my guitars and mementos. And I'm just very thankful for everything everything that's I've gotten in my life.
Yeah, and honestly, just being a friend of yours on Facebook and seeing everything and how you juggle life and everything, I love it, dude. You're a family man. Like I said, you kick ass at your job. I mean, just me on one of your shows, I love going to a Nite show because I know it's done right. I know that everything from production to hospitality to the way people are getting into the venue, everything has been thought of and it's been done well. So, and
man, I'm so glad we've been able to fool you so well.
No. I always just blame Genesee whenever I mess up. I'm like, it was just their fault. Which,
hey, man, you know what? At the end of the day, so what you just said right there, and that's really, thank you very much for the kind compliment. But really, a lot of that, the testament really goes to all my awesome venue people that I work with and the people that work for me, because without them, it's smoke and mirrors, man, and they're doing the work behind the scenes. I'm just the guy kind of guiding the ship down the canal, and they're doing what I ask them to do. So yeah, we'll definitely have to have a part 2 down the road with you because there's so much more I want to talk to you just about like this music industry and the business. Like Genesee, we talked about that a lot. One thing I always and I would love to get into down the road with you is their marketing and the way things were done with shows and kind of how
when you're faced against hard marketing decisions with things. I felt like there's a lot of shows that I worked there. I felt were kind of a slap in the face to the artist because I felt like they could have done a lot more with marketing, but they just didn't. Like I felt like they weren't there for the theater. They were more there just to have something going on in the town or something. And I just felt for artists that come out and see a half empty venue was more of a slap in the face to an artist than it was anything else. And now, and knowing the behind the scenes things where they could have probably done more, I'm like, oh, come on. And so I definitely wanted to get into that more, which we didn't. But
okay, well, we can certainly talk about marketing in another time. You know, everybody's got their own way of marketing shows too.
Exactly.
There is no complete right or wrong. A lot of times what we're doing is we're trying to find our audience and we're trying to hit our audience repeatedly. And sometimes we're very, very successful at doing it. And we reach an audience that wants to see our product. And then there's times where no matter what we do, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. They don't want to see the show. They think that the tickets are too expensive. They don't like the day of the week. There's a competing show, you know, the same demographic that we're going after that we find out is playing a week down, you know, a week later at another venue. So at the end of the day, marketing is one of those difficult things that I don't really believe that there's truly a right and a wrong, because I've seen things work that make absolutely no sense to me, and that the things that we've done that really do make sense and should have worked didn't produce any results. So I think in fairness to those who might be listening right now, I think we delve into that subject a little bit later, and we kind of talk about how marketing is done.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. I agree. So it's definitely been fun, Don. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me for 2 nights and coming back the second night. And
I had a blast, man. I had a blast, and I can't wait to come back because I love sharing my stories. I love sharing my memories, and I feel that, you know, a lot of people always want to know what we do, and here I am. I can tell you what we've done. I can tell you what my personal experiences are with artists. I can tell you about some of the weird experiences, cool experiences, the shitty experiences. So we'll save some of those stories for a later day. Yeah,
we'll plan a part 2 for this one, because this has been a really fun one. And I had a good time and enjoyed this last couple nights.
Thanks, bud. Thanks for having me on tonight. I appreciate it, and thanks for rebooting it after last night's debacle with Mother Nature.
Dude, it was so weird. Like after we were all done, like I was like going through my Instagram and I saw that video pop up. I'm like, dude, I shared this like 14 hours ago and I used Speedwagon, right? Because whenever I think of you, I always think of Speedwagon, especially you got this right behind your shoulder there. But so and yesterday morning I put Ron the Storm out, REO Speedwagon on this picture.
Over there,
you go figure the storm takes us out.
Well, very fitting. If Kevin Cronin is listening right now, he knows he has that power.
He's a genius. Him and lead singer of Supertramp are 2 of my favorite artists from that job. That era. What was that? Roger Hodgkins, I think.
Roger Hodgson, who has a unbelievable singing voice, as does Kevin.
God, dude, that was one of my first shows. My dad took me to see Supertramp, and I fell in love. So,
all right, now you're gonna do me a big favor right now, because I know we can talk forever.
Yep.
You're gonna figure out how to wrap this up right now. You're wrapping it up, and go.
We're gonna call it a night with you. So, Don, thank you for everything. Thanks for hanging out. We're definitely gonna do this again down the road. I wish you nothing but the best of luck for 2020 and 2021, the rest of 2020 and 2021, and hopefully hopefully we get these things going, man, and we keep these concerts going, and everybody kind of does what they're supposed to do and keep this thing going. So
fingers crossed, man. Thanks. Pleasure to be on your show, man. Thanks for for episode 96.
Hell yeah, dude. We'll talk soon, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you at a show soon. So.
All right,
buddy. Take care,
later, brother.
All right, okay. Whew, that was a fun one, guys. Go ahead, bring you on. You still over there? You're like, all right, I'm good. That was fun.
I'm muted. Yep.
You're always muted. So I knew we were gonna run over with him. I just knew it because he has so many cool stories. I was like, oh, just let it go. I'll be tired in the morning, but hey, it's worth it. But thank you guys for coming back and tuning in. What did you have? You've met Don before, so you know how he is, his personality and everything. Pretty cool guy, though. I mean, did you learn anything new about him?
Just cool stories.
That Aretha story was pretty fun. So I love that one. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. I mean, just for back-to-back nights and have you guys back and putting all this together. But Thank you for joining us for episode 96 with Don Kronberg. Like I said in the intro, his passion and drive for the live music industry is unlike anything I've ever seen. He keeps striving to bring the best and affordable live entertainment to the Chicagoland area. So I'm excited to see where he goes from here. I wish him nothing but the best. So I know it's gonna be great things and see what artists he brings in. I'm excited, man. I'm always excited when my friends do well and do good things. So I mentioned earlier when he was talking about competitors, there's no real competitors. They're all peers, and we just learn from each other and build from each other. So, and I've always felt that, and I always will continue to feel that. So be good out there, be kind to somebody, and we'll see you next week. We're gonna have another amazing show next week.
The Gainin Fast on Memphis podcast with Aaron Shriver is brought to you by Arlo Revolution. As we close the book on another chapter, remember, music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. Next week, Aaron connects more melodies and memories with other fans and the artists they love. Thanks for being a part of this musical journey, and we'll see you next time on the Gainin Fast on Memphis podcast with Aaron Shriver.